Brown says, get that India. Big boy.
Call an ambulance! Maybe call a priest! Oh, what a shot! What a shot! Campbell killer!
Hello and welcome back to another edition. I say another, but it's close to the final edition of the preview podcast this year. We will still be covering the NRLW as they move forwards, but the final round of the NRL is upon us. Sixties. Eels taking on the West Tigers out at Campbelltown Stadium. We'll get to that shortly. I know it's been billed as a spoon bowl. We're running with the Mariana Trench game. Whew. But as always, I'm your host, John, also known as 4020. And joining me is my good mate, Sixties. We've only got 3 games to cover today, mate. No flag, no cup. Their seasons have wrapped up. Flag falling agonisingly short of the finals. So we turn now to the Harvey Norman Women's Premiership, the NRLW and the NRL, or at least for one more week. And as always, before we talk football, checking how you doing.
Well, mate, it's really at that stage of the year where it feels so final. I've been up to Kellyville for the final Eels NRL captain's run of the year, said goodbyes to some of the staff that are moving on. And obviously, I think the next time I'll be there, it'll be pre-season training. So, yeah, there was a real finality about that. We've got the big game coming up tomorrow night, as you said, the Mariana Trench match. And that's probably better to go with than the spoon bowl, isn't it? And we've got 3 grades to cover today rather than 5 grades. Of course, we will continue with podcasts. We're just going to, I guess, rationalise how many podcasts we put out per week with less content, with not as much NRL going around. So we'll maybe be able to put previews and news together in one podcast for our listeners. And speaking of our listeners, thank you, as always, for continuing to support what we do. Our thanks to our sponsors, Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Narellan and Parramatta. Greg and the team continuing year after year to be behind the Cumberland Throw and help us to do what we do, which is provide original Eels content for fellow supporters. And, mate, I guess time to get stuck in.
Yeah, so usually we'd start with the Jersey flag, but we move now to the Harvey Norman New South Wales Women's Premiership. Eels looking to build off a stunning victory over the then undefeated Wenty Magpies, and they now host the Mounties. This one's 4:00 p.m. at Eric Tweedale Stadium as part of a double header, I believe. And again, it's the reverse splits on this one. Usually you'd have the Premier game coming second in the NRLW, but the NRLW are the curtain raiser, which obviously has to do with scheduling on the broadcast side of things. But Eels look like this. Yasmin Baker is at fullback. You've got Alicia Bell and Shay Shipton on the wings. Debbie Dwahi and Caitlin Pearden in the centres. Debbie made that jump to centre last week as a pre-game switch-up. Obviously, it was part of the plan. It wasn't just, on the spot. Which also included Alea Hamono, who has been in the centres this year, switching to 5'8". Obviously worked successfully against the Magpies. Hamono partners Sarah Dimmick in the halves. Front row sees Rashay Farmasuli and Lasalio Sita Payne reuniting again. Ashley Pottinger looks to have taken over at dummy half. She started there last week and reprises that role. Fontaine Tafua, Talisha Maiva, their captain, and Rivalia Arlo round out a very young but talented back row. On the interchange, you got Bella Sanford, Liana Dimmick, Alita Namose, and Rory Muir. Reserves Tahila Valuanga and Chelsea Makira. And again, they're taking on Mounties. Anyone I recognise in there? Jacinta Tui. That's a former Eels pathways player there. Anyone else? Georgia Clements, Logan Lamusu, I believe another pathways player. And in the forward pack, not so much. So a couple of former Eels prospects there playing for Mounties. But yeah, 4:00 p.m. out at Eric Tweedale, 60s. Eels with a huge win, but I think looking at the schedule from here on, we're in round, I believe, 10 of 11. I don't think the Eels are in the hunt for the finals at this point. If I just check the ladder, entering this round in 10th place with 3 wins, 6 losses, and assuming it's a top 5, not dissimilar to the other New South Wales Rugby League competitions. They're 2 wins behind the 5th place Bulldogs, and their for and against is significantly worse, -60. And there's a lot of teams between them that would. I think if you looked at the balance of results, I don't think there's a mathematical path there where they can get to the finals.
Yeah, and look, it's with this being the inaugural season for the Eels in this grade, I guess we had to expect some of the teething problems, and they have manifested this year. It's been a case of completions have been tough. They got a little bit better in completions, probably not where they wanted to be in last week's game, where they had something like a 67% completion rate against the Magpies. But you'd have to say that it was a landmark win for them to get victory against a team that was beating all opponents up till then, the undefeated Magpies, at their home ground. And to have a scoreline of 12-10, it says something about their attitude that the girls went in with to, defence is all about attitude, and to restrict the Magpies to those 2 tries. And of course, the last one essentially came in the final seconds of the game, and fortunately was scored out wide and couldn't be converted. Otherwise, they would have been looking at a draw. So, I guess what they have to be looking for the last 2 games is to get the wins. And it's going to be a challenge this week because Mounties are sitting in 4th place. They've had 5 wins, a draw, and 3 losses. Of course, the interesting thing with Wenty and Mounties is that they are 2 other Parramatta catchment area teams, and both of them have been in the Harvey Norman Women's Premiership for a period of time. So in one sense, they've got that experience as a club that the Eels don't have. But, we don't want the Eels to be languishing in that regard for too long. We probably want to start hitting the ground. We sort of hit the ground running this year, but, the wheels fell off a little bit for a few weeks. Let's finish it strongly. It'd be great if they can get to a 5-win, 6-loss season, so they go close to splitting the results for the year. Look, can they get the job done? Well, if they got the job done against the Magpies, there's no reason why they can't get the job done against Mounties. But again, it has to be coming in with that attitude, that self-belief that they obviously had last week, and continuing to work towards getting the completions a bit better.
Yeah, I think that sums it up. It's never been a question of talent for the girls in the Harvey Norman's team. Just about, applying those basic tenets of rugby league more effectively. And we saw that against Wenty last week, what happens when they do. So I'd like to think they can finish the season this week and next week on a strong note and carry some momentum into the off-season. And also...
Well, John, can I just say as well, the interesting thing with the 2 teams is that, as I said, Mounties sit in 4th place and they're on 11 points. The Eels are down in 10th place on 6 points. But have a listen to the for and against. Mounties 135 for, 178 against. The Eels 138 for, 192 against. They are so close with their for and against, and it just shows as well that the Mounties probably have had moments in games that they've been able to get, just come up with the right play at the right time. And unfortunately, from the Eels' perspective, it's been a case of, not being able to do that. So it gives me that continued hope that they have got it. They have got that capacity to, again, get another a top 4 opponent, take another top 4 opponent down.
Yeah, I like that. Certainly, it's not a question of talent. So I'm hoping that they can put it together for another game. And in saying that, there are players here that if the Harvey Norman season wraps up, if it will, there are players here that could be contributors to the NRLW season too. So there's still stuff to play for these ladies. So let's hope that they can get a good job done here against the Mounties, which takes us to the second game of that Eric Tweedow block, which was actually the first game. NRLW round 7. Eels taking on the Gold Coast Titans. 1:45 p.m. kickoff. You can catch this one on, I believe, Fox and KO. I'm not sure about 9 on 9 now. But the Eels reeling on multiple front 60s. They had a crushing loss to the Dragons, where they got exposed by the speed of Tegan Berry in particular. But also, equally painfully, the loss of one of their heart and soul players in Kennedy Cherrington, ruled out for the remainder of this season with that collateral knee injury. Breanna Eales has been named to replace her in what is otherwise an unchanged lineup, if I recall correctly, back to our Team List Tuesday chat on the news podcast. Of note in this game, and we mentioned it in that same podcast, Rachel Pearson marking her 25th appearance as an NRLW player. It's a pretty exclusive club right now, and it's a fair effort, by Rachel to get there, so well done to her. Hopefully she can mark it with a win, of course, which means going through the two teams here. We'll start with the Titans. They have Ivania Polite at fullback, Georgia Gray and Emily Bass on the wings. The dynamic Jamie Chapman in the centres. That's definitely one to watch right there, with Niall Williams-Guthrie also joining her in the three-quarter mark. In the half, Sienna Lafipo and Lauren Brown, who I'm not sure how the Dally M's are tracking, but she was at the top of the rankings at one point earlier this season. Front row sees Shannon Mato and Jessica Elliston as props. Brittany Brayley Nati as our dummy half. Zara Canfield, Shaylee Bent and Georgia Hale round out a very solid back row there. Lily Rose Kolk, Leica Clark, Riley Jorgensen and Matakino Gray on the interchange for the Titans. Montgomery, Ormond, Monsell, Masanga, Arakua and Sim as their extended options. For the Eel 60s, like I said, it's not too dissimilar to the team that took to the field against the Dragons. You got Church at fullback, Faye and Donovan on the wings, Owen and Kelly in the centres, Toi Hiku and Rachel Pearson rounding out an unchanged back line. In the front row, it's Albert and Jones as the props, Todd Hunter as the dummy half, Jackson on the right, Murphy captaining on the left, Breanna Eales, I mentioned, coming in as lock forward to replace Kennedy. Interchange, you got Beckett, Amiatu Fanua and Tui. Extend the roster, Mia Middleton, Ruby Jean Kennard Ellis, Pahuka Berryman Duff, Kate Fallon, Tafawa Asua. Still haven't got any match officials applied there, so don't worry about that one too much. But looking at the ladder here, Eels obviously coming off back-to-back losses, tough time for them. The Titans are equal on wins of them, and for and against, not too dissimilar to. They're +9, so -13, -22. Eels chasing, obviously, the Titans, but also the Roosters, Knights, and Broncos, who are all one win ahead of them. So it's congested. There's opportunities here to make a bounce back and surge back into contention. The only team they probably can't touch at this point is the Cronulla Sharks, who continue to rampage at the top of the ladder. So this is a big one. They need a bounce back here at home. And if they can get right, there is a chance to not just get right now, but right the ship and make a push back for finals contention.
Yeah, and really the other side of the coin is a loss makes it extremely hard to stay.
Agreed. Yeah. So if you're looking on the flip side of it, a loss puts you in a real bad spot, because you're going to have the Titans creating that swing play on you, and then you're going to have the Cowboys breathing down your necks as well.
Yeah. But, the last 2 weeks have been tough matches for the Eels to have fallen in, and unfortunately fallen in a way that has also been devastating for the differential, for the Eels to now sit at -22, and the teams that they are chasing have a very high differential. The Knights in third place. Let's go with the Broncos, who are in second place, only 2 points ahead of the Eels, but with positive 74. The Knights in third place, same number of points, differential of 46, and the Roosters differential of 44. I mean, we're talking about having to catch up over 60 points in differential. They can't afford to finish equal with any of those teams. You fall behind by 4 points after this week with a couple of them, and I know there's teams playing each other up there in that top four, which does make it interesting because the Sharks play the Roosters, so that's first versus fourth, and the Broncos and Knights face each other. That's second versus third at the moment. So the chances may be that two of them might stay on 8 points, but you don't want it to come down to 2 rounds to go and being 2 points behind and chasing massive differential as well. And, obviously a loss in this would make the differential even worse.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess the thing is the team, they can't be thinking about differential. They have to just think about getting the job done. Really, I think a win is the only thing that is acceptable for them in terms of their campaign hopes for this year. But John, I'll tell you what, you mentioned Chapman before, and
the klaxons start firing. Woo, woo, woo. She is air raid territory, isn't she? She's got the speed, the athleticism, the football nous to just terrorise Parramatta.
Is it fair to say that she is the pin-up player of the NRLW, the big star, the excitement machine of the NRLW? I know there's plenty of talent around in the NRLW, but if you're talking about a player who can ignite the field and get spectators up on their feet, you'd be talking about her, wouldn't you? Because as soon as the ball's in her hand, if there's a bit of if she's got room to move with and she's one-on-one with a defender, I mean, there's not much chance of stopping her, because you're talking about pace, you're talking, and that's enough to get around an opponent, but then you're also talking about the power that comes with her pace. And I think once she gets through the front line, well, good luck to any fullback who thinks they can maybe round her up. But she's really going to ask questions, and I think she would then be facing Rosie Kelly. Would that be right? Is that who she'd line up against? I'm thinking the side that she plays on. I think Chapman plays left side from memory.
I'm trying to think because I remember her in Origin playing on the right, but at club level does she play left?
I've got a feeling she plays left at club level, because she plays right wing at representative level.
Yes, that's right.
Left
that's
centre.
Right. So if that's the case, then she would be up against Kelly. You're right. Yeah.
Yep. So up against Kelly, and it'd be Monique Donovan then, wouldn't it?
Yes. If it's their left, our right would be Kelly Donovan.
Yeah. Okay. So big ask defensively for those girls. Massive ask for them.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the question I throw to you, John, is we're really down an important part of the Eels team in Kennedy Cherrington. Can we cover that loss?
It's always about, we've spoken about it, but it's about trying to recreate her absence in the aggregate. I don't think you can replace a player like Kennedy 1-to-1, both for what she brings tangibly and intangibly. She's obviously dynamic and a huge work rate player, and equally to that, she brings the vibes, and she's sort of what they call the kind of similar to the Penrith boys, the chief energy officer, the CEO, and she takes that role very seriously, trying to pump the girls up, and I don't think you can replace that. So for Eels, who's coming in, it's about doing a job and then being helped by the likes of Albert, Jones, Jackson, Murphy, and obviously on the interchange, Amiato and Fanoa. And yeah, maybe the Parramatta Eels have to go a little bit or look a little bit different the way they shape up for the middle now. Maybe someone else can step up. Maybe one of the interchange players can bring a bit more juice in Amiato or Fanoa. maybe someone like Maddie Jones, gets another carry or two in her stint there and can make the most out of it, because all the work that Kennedy does, and we've seen her go for over 200 a game and make 30-plus tackles or close enough, that needs to be shared around now. So, yeah, I don't want to heap all the pressure onto Breanna because that's unfair. I think that it's going to be on the other core members of this pack to help guide her and help put her in a position to succeed. And I don't know if the Eels can fully recreate Kennedy in the aggregate because she's just that kind of player. But sometimes injury and suspension and just bad luck can be a catalyst for greater things elsewhere. And, the sum of the team stepping up in the void of or absence of a player can happen. And I'm hoping that's the case here because Kennedy is a very big loss.
Yeah, I was wondering how much of the intangible that we miss with her, because it's easy to quantify what you miss.
Yeah, she averages X amount of meters, Y amount of tackles, and that's the benchmark she got to hit. But like you said, it's the other stuff, the intangible, the leadership, the camaraderie sort of stuff that is way harder to qualify, let alone quantify. And yeah, she's a big part of that for this team, and she's still gonna be involved with the team. It's not to say that she can't be out there pumping her girls up with that knee injury still, but the difference is she's doing it from the sidelines, and that does make a difference when it's the person that's trying to gas you up is also the one that's first through the breach when it comes to leading line speed or making a run.
Yeah, and I think the other aspect is the Eels just simply have to be so much better than they have been in the last fortnight.
Mm-hmm.
If they reproduce the last fortnight this week, then the Titans have the sort of players that are going to give the same problems that the Eels had against both the Knights and the Dragons. Yeah, there is that athleticism that I guess that strike power that's there in the Titans team, the sort of thing there that we couldn't handle against the Knights and against the Dragons, and it was stark. I mean, for those people who watched it on television, it was no doubt obvious. But watching it live, it was it was tangible. Like just even without the line breaks, you could just see a different energy level in both teams. And unfortunately, that energy wasn't there with Parramatta over the last 2 weeks. And I'm hoping that it's not a mindset issue after the loss to the Knights. We can maybe point to a few different things with the Knights, the delay in getting started, the players not quite being on song on the day. But when you get it 2 weeks in a row, then you start to go, okay, let's hope Steve Georgalis can, get them turned around, because I think there's definitely, an aspect of the strike power in those last couple of teams. But, I don't want it to be, and I'm hoping it's not a mindset issue where they doubt themselves at the moment. So, anyway, look, I'm actually a little bit concerned about what tip I might see coming in from Kai Ferreira, who writes our previews, because I think I could be wrong, but I think he's actually tipped the winners of all of the Eels matches so far. Like, he's tipped our losses as well as our wins. So, Kai, if you're listening, maybe tip a win for us this week. So, look, I have to stick with the Eels for this one, on the proviso that we play some good positive football and take it, and really when the chances come, and I know it's as much about the opponents who find that little bit extra in defence or whatever, because there were so many times the Eels got close last week to scoring and just couldn't quite get the ball down over the line. And it also happened against the Knights. I think there was a couple of times we were held up over the line. Just if we can just ice those chances when they're there, that goes a long way towards that. And it also goes a long way towards that mindset as well, feeling really positive because you're getting the points when you're down there. So, look, I'll tip the Eels to get it done by about 6 points. Not with a huge amount of confidence, John.
No.
Not with a huge amount of confidence. I think our first try scorer, I'll go with Cassie Hiku this week. And I'll go the double and predict her to be best on field.
Yeah, the confidence that I had in our girls to win and win convincingly sort of evaporated and dried up after some tough losses. I will tip them for a tough win as well, provided they can put the halters on Chapman and company and not let them run right. First try scorer, I'll go with the captain, Mahalia Murphy, playing off of Cassie Hiku, which will put Cassie or Mahalia in the frame for best on field, but I will go with a bounce-back game from Abby Church, who had a few struggles against the Dragons, and she wasn't on her lonesome there. So I think Abby will be back in the forefront here.
Okay, so that finally brings us to the big game. We're not going to use the other word that's been used to describe the match. We're going to go with your unique terminology, John, the Mariana Trench match.
The Mariana Trench match, and it gets its own theme music.
Oh, mate, our listeners have to be absolutely pumped for it now. The match is sold out. There's probably going to be people camping out and being prepared to pay scalpers now to get into the ground based on that pump-up music that's there. You might be like some members of TCT that are gathering for a special Mariana Trench match gathering and a few beers and pizzas and whatever the case may be. We'll hit it with an instant reaction straight away at that gathering. So we've got to anticipate a win, John. We've got to anticipate a win where the Eels can not just climb out of the Mariana Trench, but maybe push the Rabbitohs down to keep the Tigers company.
It's pretty funny that we're actually in a position to finish third last, not second last, when all is said and done. So,
the dizzying heights on the ladder to which we can climb.
Sometimes it's the little victories, isn't it?
It is. We got to finish. Like if we can finish the season on a winning double, oh my goodness, it might be too much for us to handle. Stand by, because there might be some ridiculously, deliriously happy people in the instant reaction. So let's hit us with the two teams, mate.
Yeah, so this is the pub slot game, Friday night, 6:00 p.m. As you said, out at Campbelltown Stadium. You can catch this one on Fox and KO. So we look at the West Tigers, and they've got a couple of change. I don't know if it's changes right now because I believe some of the injuries were prior, but they've got some young guys in the team. Heath Mason at fullback, Junior Tupou, Charlie Staines on the wings, Solomona Fa'atape and Josh Feldy in the centres. Lockie Galvin is in the halves of Aiden Caesar, although I did see reports that Caesar might be out 60s. So I have to follow that one up, hopefully this podcast, but I'll see what I can see.
And who would they be looking at to come in? Would they slot a Fainu?
Oh, that's where they put Latu Fainu into the halves, and then who would they bring on to Tony Saka, I believe, was a report, who would make his debut from the same team that Mason and company have been part of.
Okay.
Which takes us to the front row, where outgoing and former Eels prospect Stefano Utoikamanu plays his last game as a Tiger before joining the Melbourne Storm. Then you've got Dave Clemmer partnering him in the front row. Apiasai Coruscant is their dummy half and dynamic playmaker. Alex Seyfarth is a firebrand on the edges there, with another Fainu of the Samuela variety playing on the other side. Isaiah Papali'i, another former Eel, another departing player. Bit of a theme there. Going to the Panthers, he plays his last game as a Tiger out there. Then on the bench, you have provisionally Latu Fainu, but he's going into the starting team with Tony Saka coming in. Then you got Sione Fainu, another Fainu there. Fanua Pole and Alex Twal rounding out their rotation. Extended roster, Johansson, Lob, Porter, Laali'i, and then the aforementioned Tony Saka, who is going to, per reports, be part of this game. For the Eels, we've got a couple of changes that we detailed in Team West Tuesday / the News podcast. Starting at fullback, Captain Quint Gufferson. You got Mike Acevo and Sean Russell, one of those changes there. Sean back into the fold this week on the wing. Will Penasini and Blaze Talangi are in the centres. Russell's inclusion pushes Jake Tungler to 18th man. Moving into the halves now, Dill Bags, Dill Brown, and Dejan Arce in the halves. Reagan Campbell-Gillard, Sean Lane starting as props. I believe it's Cap 107 for Reg 60s. Unofficially, his last game as an Eel per reports we've been seeing across the last few weeks, although it hasn't been made official. But I do want to pay my tribute to what should go down as one of Parramatta's greatest front row pairings. I'm not saying it's the best or the greatest, but the combination between him and Reg and Junior rather in their prime, very fearsome, and they fell painfully short of that breakthrough title that would have etched them into immortality. But what he did for Parramatta has been huge, and he deserves a tip of the hat for that. Brendan Hands is at dummy half. Kelma Tuolangi returns to play on an edge with Bryce Cartwright on the other side, so Kelma left, Bryce right. Joe Offengahi locking the scrum. Interchange, Joey Lussick, Makasi Makatoa, Luca Moradi, and Ofahiki Ogden extend the roster. We mentioned Tungor as 18th man. You got Dury, Sanders, Dunster, and Greg there likewise.
Yeah, now, first question I want to throw to you, John, is you look at the West Tigers team, how many of them have a link to the Eels in some way, that they either played at Eels junior clubs or were part of the Eels system at some point?
Yeah, they've got a few in there. I'm not sure about some of the backs there, because I don't think there's any connection to Junior Tupou or Fa'atape. I felt he's a Manly player, but we know Lockie Galvin's a Parramatta prospect. Stefano, then Alex Twal.
Dave Clement.
Dave Clement, that's right. Yeah, that's that is a deep cut there to the point that I've forgotten about that. But yes, he was in the pathways, or didn't get picked in the pathways, whichever way it went, when he was like turning 15, I believe. So they've definitely got a pretty...
The Finus are...
they are Western Sydney, that's right, yeah.
Yeah.
Just that they got recruited so early by Manly that it's one of those ones that's kind of... You don't... Not saying you don't count, because that's not how it works, but that's like the patented brother system, isn't it? You get the first brother by poaching, and then the rest sort of fall into the system after that, and the first brother being the one that can't play, Menezi, but obviously a very talented football family. Samuela looks like a real prospect, and Latu's certainly got the talent to cement himself in the halves once he gets a bit more experience.
Yeah, I can remember a couple of them featuring in the
Manly Harold Matts,
the Manly Matts grand final team, and it was they were the players that were instrumental in their victory that day. So yes, and now we look at the Eels team, and it's a team which we know the evidence is there, can play really well for 70 minutes or even just a couple minutes longer. But there reaches a point in games where we can't get the job done as it should be done. Now, we got the win last week. We don't want to sit through a 10-minute period like we did last week. We would much rather sit through the 70 minutes that we got to start the game. I've got my take on it, which is that we struggle against unstructured football, and that I don't necessarily agree with the stance that it's a case of fitness, physical fitness, because teams are match fit at this time of year. A game of NRL, if you're playing that every week, you're going to be fit. All right. Now there might be some teams that are maybe a little bit more advanced, but I think where there's a problem has been, if you're talking about fitness, it might be, the mindset fitness, and I think it's a combination of maybe a little bit of lack of belief in themselves at the end of games when things might start to go against them. But you could see that with the body language, couldn't you? Last week, it was atrocious. From the time the first Dragons try was scored, heads were down, hands on hips, and you looked at the two teams and you went, which team's winning by over 20 points on the scoreboard at the moment?
Yep.
With less than 10 to go. Like, it just didn't ring true, like just what you saw out there. So I've got to think that there's something going on between the ears in terms of that self-belief and knowing that they could finish the game off by sticking to what's working for them. And it's like, I don't know whether they don't trust the player next to them, they don't trust themselves, whatever the case may be. You don't have 28 points scored in 10 minutes and say, no, everything's sweet. It just went against us in that period of time. We've seen it before. We can't have it this week, because if there's one thing that the Tigers have got, is they've got young players who don't mind throwing that ball around and chancing their hand. And, I mean, John, the question I throw to you is, what level of lead would you feel safe at towards the end of the game?
Hey, we've got the it on record now. 42 to was it 42 to 12, 44 to 12 of 10 minutes ago. That's clearly a safe lead.
That has to be the benchmark. We need a 32-point lead to feel safe with 10 minutes to go.
Yeah, you want to hope that they can't collapse that hard again, but there's been enough signs in the last month where it's been contrasted against some serious effort. Like, they have dug deep to compete against good teams in this run, but my goodness, have they found a way to hurt themselves? And that we live in a reality where they won against the Dragons. Consider the inverse, where they actually had that comeback against them. Like, they live in history forever as the team that bled that many points and lost, instead of jokingly being the team that let the Dragons become the highest scoring losers in the history of the NRL. Just be thankful for what we have, I suppose. But yeah, we're gonna be playing this game on Friday, knowing that no lead is safe, essentially, unless it's 50 points, 40 points with. I was going to say 20 minutes left, but that might not be enough now. So, just got to live in the moment for this 160s. No lead is safe, and hopefully that cuts both ways.
Well, let's just do a quick season reflection. What have we had? 6 wins for the season.
Mm-hmm.
Who are the teams we beat?
Yeah, it's not a bad group when you look at it in reflection. We started off the season with a very solid win against the Bulldogs. We came back and won against Manly, both of whom are looking like legit contenders. Continuing from there, we had a win against the Cowboys, who themselves, again, looking like a reasonable squad when all is said and done. They are also heavy in finals contention. So... what else? We've had near wins against a number of teams, but we spanked Cronulla.
Another top 8 team.
Another top 8 team. We handled the Warriors, who admittedly aren't a top 8 team this year, but had good credentials. and then beat on the Dragons. So I'm probably
Who are trying to be a top 8
yeah,
team
who are trying to be a
still.
top 8 team, and then in there we've had tough losses against the Broncos, the Panthers, on two occasions. We pushed Melbourne. So the Newcastle Knights got away from us on both another sort of fade from us, and then some pretty tough officiating calls from our old mate Peter Goff, who's got the whistle this week, I believe. So the Eels have been bizarrely competitive. I mean, when we played the Bulldogs the second time around, 60s, we were in the box seat to win that one. Ended up going down 22-18. Our season is littered with a lot of what ifs and could have beens, even with all the injuries, even with all the seismic upheaval of the coaching staff and whatnot. This is, if you're trying to quantify, qualify, break up, analyze this season, it is one of the most bizarre I've ever seen. Haven't had 50 put on us. That mythical mark about competitiveness.
I'm not even going to say that.
I've pissed in the wind before this year. I've managed to. We've been sailing this way for the last few rounds since I brought it up against, I believe, the Roosters or the Broncos. So it is a singularly bizarre season, and
I'm not going to bring it up, John, because
you speak power to words when you do that sort of thing. I'm just a meme lord.
I'm there at the ground last week, and I said to Mitch sitting in front of me, this is about 15 minutes to go, I said, can I call it yet, do you think? And there was a chorus of people yelling out to me, no. All right. And then with about 11, 12 minutes to go, I said, you know what? I think I feel safe. I'm calling it.
I mean, you weren't wrong. You weren't wrong.
And
the floodgates had opened, though.
And I was sitting there thinking, this is a combination of the power of my words to, absolutely slap me in the face, and the team that I support. But mate, like there might be a parallel universe somewhere where had a few things been handled better by the team, you could be talking about them coming into this last round and the match being significant for determining whether they're in the 8 or not. I mean, that's literally like as soon as you start talking about 5 or 6 games that they should have iced, and we know that it's up there with that many at least, that it's, you start to think
11 wins has you competing for the top 8 coming into this round 60s.
Yeah, let's face it, it's one of those seasons where I think in one sense I feel like it's open because the Storm have that gap at the top of the table, but there's a part of me that goes, this is actually one of the more average minor premiership teams that I've seen. And I don't mean that disrespectfully. What I mean is I look at the Melbourne Storm team and I don't fear what they might throw. And that might seem a bizarre thing for a supporter of the potential wooden spoon team to be saying, but I'll also say the team that will finish 15th on the ladder rather than potential wooden spoon team. But I look at that and I go, you know what? They're beatable by so many teams. It hasn't turned out that way because there is something about the Storm. But as a unit, in terms of what strike power they have, it's not the same as previous years. Then you look at the Panthers and go, if they haven't got Nathan Cleary out there, they are nowhere near the Panthers of the last 3 years. Nowhere near. Now, he might come back and they get 4 in a row, and it would be continuing to build their legacy. But, and then once you start to come down, we've seen that the Eels can compete with all those other teams after the Roosters. And mind you, the Roosters now, they got a personnel issue. So John, yeah, it feels like it was a comp where if you had a decent roster, you could have really had, a team could have a really good crack at getting a title.
This is the first year in a long time where it feels like someone could come from the blue and maybe make a shake of it. If things persevere with Nathan Cleary sitting on the sidelines, that timeline's a bit murky. Penrith obviously keeping that one close to their chests. But yeah, it does feel like Roosters pre-injuries, but Sharks, I know they've got some issues there when it comes to the big games, but Bulldogs, Cowboys, Sea Eagles, if they stay healthy, Dolphins, Knights, probably they're real, like, you're talking like long odd dark horses there. But Manly, Cowboys, Bulldogs, the way they're playing, there's no reason why, if things align, they couldn't make a real tilt this year, which, as opposed to recent seasons where obviously Penrith's dominance, but the Eels are obviously good in that time too. We saw some other great teams in the mix there too, with Melbourne probably in better iterations as well, where it was just that much tougher. This season is there for someone to maybe shake up the script a bit.
Yeah, and I know we've gone off script a little bit in talking about this and veering away from previewing the Eels game, but it just feels like, lost opportunities this year to, and I guess maybe the supporters of a lot of clubs would feel like that. Any team that doesn't make the 8 would be thinking, man, this was a year to be in the
Raiders, Broncos, Warriors, Rabbitohs, Titans as well,
Absolutely. So, mate, getting back to the Eels and Tigers match, I think we know that our Eels team can score points. We know that there's not going to be a matter of questioning effort. We know that both teams will probably be equally enthused and energized about what that match means to them. No one wants to end up with the dreaded kitchen you implement. It's it's an embarrassment to end up with it. There's no other way of saying it. The Tigers, well, of course, their motivation is they don't want to be 3 years in a row of holding the spoon. The Eels feel, and probably, both as individuals and as a club, that they should never be finishing anywhere down near this point in the table, even with the roster issues that they have. So I think the players will feel that they've got a point to prove. They don't want to be handed the spoon. They've shown over the last 3 weeks that, more than the last 3 weeks, the last 2 months, I would suggest that they do have some pride in what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, there are struggles defensively. There is no question about that. But in terms of effort, the effort is there. The care factor is there. The desire to finish as high as they can on the ladder is there. It then comes down to, can they do it for 80 minutes? I think it's going to be, honestly, I think the game is going to be decided in the last few minutes.
There's heartbreak lurking for some team here. There is, goodness, there is some heartbreak coming, and I'm hoping it's not Parramatta.
And I'm hoping it's not at the hands of the referee.
I agree.
I am hoping that it is not a refereeing call that leaves us hitting your John McEnroe stinger at the end of the game, John.
Mm-hmm.
It's, so look, as far as I'm concerned, we're going to see similar from the Eels to what we've seen in recent weeks. Look, we were doing a really good job last week, hitting the ball up behind the ruck against the Dragons. I've got no problem if they decide to go that same path against the Tigers. Earn the spread first and play some good structured footy. The second phase still there, but let's not throw it where we're going to be at risk of handing over possession in our own territory. We've got to have a good completion rate. There was a good completion rate last week. So, look, I guess I'm ready to make a call. John, are you ready to make a call on this match?
Let's get into it.
Yep. Okay. So, I think the forwards will have a very big game in this one, John. I think they've got the pack that can get the job done. I'm pretty sure they see some opportunities there. I'm tipping that Joe Offengowie will continue his good run of form. I think Kilmer is a genuine strike player for us. I can see him hitting the edges and making life hell for one of the halves. I've got to remember which side they will play on, but whoever is the half on Kilmer's side is going to be asking for trouble.
I think it'll be fine, but I could be wrong about that.
Yep. Look, having got that done, or having said that, I'm going to go for first try scorer for the Eels as Kilmer Tuolangi. I think the best on field. Well, you know what? I can't go past the captain for this. Gutho will give the Eels cause to celebrate this week. He'll have a man of the match performance, and the Eels will get the job done by 8 points. I think our hearts will be in our mouth, but we'll get the job done by about 8.
Yeah, this is very much a classics, isn't it? I think Gufferson best on field was a great shout. I'm going to double down on that. But in saying that, Reagan Campbell-Gill, I had to leave it all out there. I don't think he's going to die wondering in terms of leaving anything on the field there for the Eels. So I think Reg will challenge Guffer there for best on field. First try scorer, Mike Acebo. Easy. I'll go that one there. And then the overall game, I tipped a high-scoring one against the Dragons. I think I went 28-26, and I wasn't even close. So similar mould here, but we'll bump it up by a try. So Eels 36-32 winners.
Well, I guess if we look at the two teams and we see they both sit with the identical points against of 690. The Eels having about a 60 to 70 point better attack. We know it's going to be high scoring again. So I'm not going to argue with your thoughts in that regard, John. I guess this is it, mate. We're both tipping the Eels to get the job done, to climb to the dizzying heights of 15th on the ladder after this game in the Mariana Trench match. Make sure that you look, no matter what happens, enjoy this week. The season is over for the NRL team. We've needed the season to be over for some time. Once this week's over and done with, then we can start looking at what the future has in store. And I'm sure there'll be plenty of news and plenty spoken about what's going to happen moving forward. We need this refocus that will come about. Stick with us. We'll bring you the footy news as it's happening. There's things we won't get involved in, but we'll bring you all the footy news as it's happening. And thank you to our sponsors, Star Partners, Real Estate, Auburn, Narellan and Parramatta. Greg and the team, great supporters there. Thank you to all of our listeners. Please stick with us as we drop back to probably one podcast a week from here on in. But there's no off season for TCT. We keep the content coming for you 12 months of the year. And we appreciate you sticking with us during a season like this. And John, as I always say, go you mighty Eels.